Hey, let me know when you're ready.
Right? And I think I need to attribute that to Gary Blank, because that's something it's part of his um, long existing presentation on starting consultants networks. Next slide, please. Okay, some basic financial advice. This is just guidance. You all know this, maybe, I hope you do. But when you get started, you need to learn to read a financial statement. You need to understand what bookkeeping is. You need to understand this. You need to be able to put together a cash operating plan, something that you can test the business with. Is this actually a business? So I call it. Does this meet the smell test? Does it function? What is going to be required? What check marks do I have to get in order to make this a business? What are the turning points? What is the picket fence of accomplishments that have to happen before this is a business? The more, when you work on this, it's not as hard as you might think, but it gives you an idea of whether this can turn into something that's useful or not. I would recommend that you find a bookkeeper. There are many bookkeepers that will work on an hourly basis. Initially, you don't need very much. You just need someone to set up the books and make sure that they're kept up to date. Please do this, because you get busy trying to do other things and you end up with a shoebox of expenses that 6 months later you can't even find them all, and you don't know how to put them all together, and then you're going to pay somebody a lot of money to try to straighten that all out. So, it may cost. I mean, to give you an example, starting a company, even with QuickBooks Online and a bunch of tools and that sort of thing, still going to cost, a couple, $100, $150 a month or something like that. Well worth the money. I often say, if you can't afford a bookkeeper, you may not be able to afford to be in business. So you may have someone in your family that can do it. As long as that's something they can dedicate time to, that's fine, but it needs to be handled. You need to also, I would recommend that you create some kind of way to track your cash. When are bills coming in? When are things going to have to be paid? If you're putting your own money into the company, you need to make sure that all happens smoothly. So put together some kind of a plan to watch your cash, so that you can plan ahead and not have train wrecks. It's very distracting to have those train wrecks. Next slide. Okay, so that was sort of the basics of, and there's so many other things we could talk with about how do you conceive of and start the company. But let's move on to marketing, sales, and operation. And again, I want to start with defining a couple of. Marketing means identifying your customers and what they need that you can supply, right? There's a mixture there, right? What can you do and what do they need, right? So you need to think about that, because you need to be able to express that, and it's going to tell you who you're looking for, so that you have some sense of where to go looking, right? Where is that demographic? Where is that group that you need? If you are particularly good at electromagnetics or something, then you need to think about which industries do they use electromagnetics, and what kind of positions or roles could I take on. And you need to describe those so that you can market to them, right? You need to find who those customers, those potential prospective clients are, so that you can target them, right? Sales is the business of engaging with those prospects and converting them into clients, right? So that means once you've found a way to reach out to them, you can do it in two ways. You can reach out directly, or you can essentially you can market in a sense so that they become aware of your ability to help them and reach out to you. And they're both very strong. So there's a bunch of ways to do that. We'll talk about them. And then last thing, operations. Operations, in the way I'm describing it to you, consists of communication, conducting work, and managing all of your administrivia, I would call it, accounts receivable, accounts payable, all the other administrative activities that you need to do to essentially keep the business going, no matter whether you're one person or 5 people or 10 people or however it may turn out. And it's surprisingly easy once you sort of get what all the pieces are. But hopefully some of the tools I have to suggest will help those. Next page. Okay, so we already talked a little bit about the marketing perspective. You need to think hard about what makes you unique. What is the service offering, or what is the focus of your practice? And I would even suggest you go so far as to make a little statement about your business. What you do and who your customers are. If you can describe that succinctly, then it'll keep you from chasing things that are outside of your target zone, right? Next slide, yeah. And so that goes to my statement here, focus, grasshopper, right? You want a clear mission, a well-defined objectives, strategy that fulfills those objectives, and tactics that implement the strategy, right? So you should give some time and think that through, and you may change it from time to time, but don't get, sometimes I say, you aren't anything for a buck corporation. You are what you are. So, if your focus is, let's say I was saying electromagnetics, so let's say you were focused on electromagnetics. Oh, well, I guess I could do some software. Oh, I guess I could do some power study. That's fine if that's what you want to do, but that's not, you said you were electromagnetics. So be clear on what you're trying to do so that your message isn't mixed up. And if you have several different things that you want to do, you can make it clear that you have different capabilities, and you may market them separately. Okay, but you need to focus and not just get distracted and run off in random directions, because it'll waste your time and it'll confuse your potential customers. Next slide. So there's a lot of marketing channels that you can reach out to. Whether you could write books, certainly your website is an area where there's a lot of opportunities these days. Growing something called SEO is very important, and that requires adding some content to your website that matches the search terms that your potential customers would be using, right? And if you do this well, you'll move up in the list of, when someone searches on Google, they will find you by those terms that you've included in these pages. If you're adding, and that's another thing, if your page is living, in other words, it keeps getting new content on it, it tends to be ranked higher. So you can also search Google. You can actually ask Google about what search terms are being searched, and you can say, oh, I should, since this one has been asked 10,000 times in the last month, I should probably make sure it's in my page, right? And have some discussion in it, or have it a blog or something that puts it in there. There's a lot of things you can do with websites, as well as you can do what's called a funnel. And some of you may know this already, but you can essentially create a one topic page in your website that has the SEO around it for a particular thing. And one of the tricks that people use is to offer something like or some other bit of information, or a table or something that's a free download. You get people who are searching come to that page, which is an intentional funnel, and you get them to, you'll give this to them for free. All they got to do is give you their email address and phone number or something like that. And now you have a potential customer that, you could put on you could call them, you could email them, or you could add them to your a mailing list so that you could continue to keep in touch with them over time, and maybe eventually they will mature into a client. I've already talked a little bit about blogs, doing something on a monthly basis or a bi-monthly basis that has the search terms and the information about your particular specialty that people would be looking for, can help bring them to your website. Of course, participating in webinars like we're doing tonight establishes your credentials, hopefully, and gives you some awareness, and as well as sometimes you can link if you have a webinar that will stay on YouTube or stay out there on the web, you can link that to your website, and that also will create additional search and return back to your website, which will raise you in search results. You can tie your website to social media and posts in LinkedIn and in Facebook and other, all of these can improve your search results. And organic, actually putting the content onto those sites will improve organic engagement in those sites and can lead people back to your site also. I mentioned white papers. All of that establishes your credibility. Getting referrals is, of course, huge. Networking is something hopefully we can get back to doing in person one of these days, but it's very, very important because people work with those they know and like, and the networking is very, very helpful in getting those second and third connections. Articles, newsletters, you can be using tools like MailChimp and other things. Very helpful. And it's amazing how fast you can grow a pretty large newsletter list. If I mentioned Jacob Benengo, who's the chair right now of our AICN, but I think he's got over 20,000 in his mailing list right now, which he sends out every month. So very good. YouTube videos will improve your Google search. So if you can make short videos about your things that are interesting to those that are interested in your specialty, those will help your search results and move your website, as well as get you some more face time with potential customers. So anyway, that gives you, I've spent some time on there because I wanted to give you some examples. But there's a lot of different channels. But if you're not making use of the internet these days, you're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. Next slide, please. Okay, sales. So I hear all the time, I'm an engineer. I don't do sales. I don't like sales. It's horrible. Yeah, well, yeah, I got it. I certainly do understand that. But yes, you do. We all do. If you've had to make an effort to please a customer, you searched for a new job, you've gotten your project approved, funds for new equipment, maybe you got a date once, right? You get the idea. You've all been involved in sales. We've all been involved in sales. It's not so bad, but it does require some attention, right? All success requires sales, right? There's all sorts of excuses. I got it. I understand. But figure it out. Network, contact your prospective customers. Keep looking for more. It just keeps cycling around and around. And you need to take a sort of a slice of your daily or weekly schedule and constantly be involved in the marketing and sales efforts, or you end up with nothing on your plate after a while. So, consulting can be a feast and famine kind of an effort. So part of what you want to do is you want to try to balance it always. So you're not just 100% heads down working for 6 months and then starving to death for 6 months, right? So it's a challenge, but that's part of what you do. And, as I said before, everything begins with a customer, and I attribute that to Joe Sims, one of the partners I've worked with. Send the proposal, close the deal, do the work, send the invoice, get paid, right? The cycle that sort of goes on and on and on forever. And if you're not sending proposals, you're not closing any deals, you don't have any work to do. Anyway, so you got to be sending proposals, and you got to be finding people to send them to. Next slide.